Welcome back to Monsters of Curiosity, where we have three monsters who are very curious, especially about our topic today. I will kick it off and then we'll introduce each other. What we're talking about today, and it came up, I think, in our last get together, is how internal distrust is increasing in business because we were reading this all over the place and hearing about it from friends and colleagues that there's distrust in business. It has to do with return to office, downsizing, layoffs, reorgs, M&As, you name it, it's happening. And here to talk about it is myself, Susan Evans. Handled a lot of M&As and downsizing and layoffs in my life and can say firsthand on the front line, did see a lot of distrust. So from there, I'll turn it over to Jenny Evans.
Hello, everybody. Good to be back again. Glad you're here. As a speaker and executive coach, I really see this a lot as well, especially Susan, like all of the change that you mentioned is constantly happening on a global perspective, economic, political, personal. Trust just isn't what it used to be. So I'm excited to dig in and hear everybody's thoughts.
Mhm.
Paul?
Yeah, I'm Paul Conradi, and I've lived through many mergers and acquisitions and change of ownership and all that sort of thing in multiple roles. So I just wanted to add to this that the trust tax is a real thing. And in my kind of thinking through systems and how you can measure things, it is a measurable thing. And there are some specific things you can do as a business owner to be aware of over time how your trust may erode and what you can do about it.
Yeah. So I was thinking, because I was in the last couple days, came up about how people don't trust their bosses or the company. And it's not like I don't trust the company. It's like, who is the company? It's my boss, it's my boss's boss. There's this level of, I have to watch out for me. And so I was thinking, when when did this happen? I mean, is this actually new that we don't trust companies, or are we just now talking about how for the past 75 years we haven't trusted
Maybe it's
companies?
Citizens United that did it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I think
Because I was like, "Oh, go."
well, when you think like how long has this happened? For me, the first thing I think of is this is something that is hardwired and baked into our brains for millions of years, that the default option for our brain is to assume the worst because that was a protective
Yeah.
mechanism, and that trust was something in a new environment that if your default was, oh, I'm just going to trust everyone and everything about this environment, we wouldn't have survived. And so that survival hardwiring, to your point, Susan, is all of us, which includes the CEO of the company, the people that are on the board, the leaders, the managers, the frontline employees. We are all in survival mode, looking out for our own best interest, which isn't always the best interest of the team, of the company, of
Mhm.
society. So there's this primitive part of our brain that is saying, don't trust people. But then there's the advanced part of our brain that understands, like, well, if there's not a sense of trust here, how are we really going to get things done? And how do we
Mhm.
create trust? So I would say lack of trust has been around since the dawn of man.
Yes. I don't trust the bear over there outside the cave. No, I
No.
Well,
don't. It's
your point's well taken about survival. I mean, think about our parents telling us, "Don't get into strangers' cars." I mean, that's like we're trained from early on, and I can only imagine kids these days are really put into a place of distrustfulness, and that just kind of comes out of our society right now. It just oozes out.
I
Hmm.
think I remember a friend of all of ours talking about this, uh, David Stillman through generations, and we would have conversations about this, and he's like, "Well, boomers were loyal to their company, And then Gen X got through layoffs and then became skeptical. It's like, well, I was just laid off, but my parents never were. So what's going on? And then millennials saw parents get laid off and came to the job market like, I don't trust any of you. And Gen Z has no loyalty at all because it feels like for a business owner, it's eroded over time. And I don't know, frankly, if it's the small business owner. It's the swaths of people who get laid off from, Meta, from Google, and that's what you read about, um, and how companies do it in a way so they don't have to alert SEC. We're gonna do it once here, and then we're gonna do death by 1,000 cuts at certain points, so it doesn't raise alarm bells for our shareholders or our stock price, and so I think it's been this thing that maybe was there since the dawn of time, but became very, I think, really, it's all over now. It's like because 'cause I'm skeptical, and I've been on the inside ring of layoffs and having to say, "Here's how we're gonna talk about this so people believe us." And we'd have to ask, "What is true? What is gonna happen?" Because you can't say this is the last of the layoffs, because that's a lie. Because the CEOs weren't doing it because they knew there'd be more, they're just like, "We can't say it because if one customer leaves, we won't have enough for payroll, we'll have to lay off again." So how the economics of it were real, but I don't know that any of the companies would say it's the economics of it. It's math. It comes down to
Well,
math.
it
Everything
can be,
does.
but isn't it the authentic voice that's kind of driving some of this? And,
Yep.
I mean, I know Gen Z and millennials have these built-in BS meters because they've been marketed to since they were, toddlers. So they really don't see, particularly in the digital world that I live in, they don't see authenticity as they
Mhm.
don't see marketing message as anything but a marketing message, and they ignore it.
Right.
Whereas authenticity, which is why influencers have so much power, is because they're viewed as being authentic voices. And when they break that trust because of whatever they've done, for, how they're marketing a product in the midst of their stuff in a way that's not that's inauthentic, they're, there they go, they're gone. So I think that's why we see these really huge distrust signals coming out,
Mhm.
and companies can get that. I mentioned it earlier as like a trust tax. It's kinda like a technology debt. You have some problems that continue to compound over time, and trust is one of those signals that I think factors into how a company is viewed, and that's from both the employees as well as customers. So, but I kinda wanna go back to that authenticity piece, and maybe Jen, you have some thoughts on that, in that how do we filter? How do humans filter that in their experience of each other, in relationship building, etcetera?
Mm.
And there has to be trust as part of the basis of it, but how do you do that without seeming overly eager?
Yeah. You know, I think I'm thinking about, like, how often I hear from leaders with an organization that we wanna build more trust, and as we're talking about this, I think some leaders make the erroneous assumption that there's a high level of trust at baseline, and it just gets eroded over time. Where I feel like baseline, I think you should be assuming that you're not trusted and that trust is
Exactly.
something that you need to be working towards, not just in your words, but in your actions, in your priorities
Mhm.
every single day. Because, Paul, to your point, human beings and the authenticity, we're really good at noticing when there is a disconnect between what somebody says and what they do and past history. Um,
Mhm.
And I just to your point, Susan, too, it's getting worse with we can't even trust our own eyes anymore because
Mm-mm.
videos are now can
AI.
be fake
Mhm.
I
images.
blame you,
We
AI.
can't trust our ears anymore of like trust really is at a premium these days. And I
Mhm.
think the authenticity piece, I think a lot of managers struggle with how much can I really share with employees, even from a legal perspective of what's really
Um,
going on in the
Mhm.
company and how do you toe that line? I mean, Susan, you work so much with companies and business owners where, they come to you because something really bad is happening and they have to communicate and navigate through that.
Yes. Well, and it was always even when there were RIFs, reduction in force, when companies would have layoffs or there would be mass closures of stores across the country, whatever it would be, it came down to what is true, what is happening here, and we always had to start well, at least I always said, "We have to start with the truth." And now we can't oftentimes, like, you can't be completely transparent, and not because you didn't wanna be, but it had to do with we can't predict the future, and if we say 4 things and we're guessing at 3 of them, the chances of us being correct in 6 weeks could be slim to none. So what we had to say was true at the time because we weren't sure what was going to happen, whether it would be a good result, a medium result, or a bad result. And that's where we'd say we need to tell the truth as we know it now. And employees would be, as they found out 6 weeks later, "How come you didn't tell us then?" It's like, "'Cause we didn't know then that this was gonna happen." So now the constant adjustment to tell the truth, because the truth is not static, it changes because we all change. That was one of the things that we chased a lot was how much can we tell and stay true and truthful in this moment so we can give people the leadership that they're looking for. And that was really hard. It was hard because there's I can text you, I can go on my Slack channel, my Teams channel. It's like I can tell you anything now, whereas before there wasn't a Slack channel. And the reason I bring that up is that some of the leadership teams I worked with were old, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but they were old and had history of, I remember a fax machine and pre-fax. So the chances of you as an employee or shareholder finding anything out was much less possible because the channels of communication weren't so ubiquitous. Is that the right word? I
yeah.
believe
Mhm.
in
No,
me.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was interesting in that we had to tell the truth as we knew it at the moment, and they would say, "I remember when we used to be able to say things definitively because we there was less, I would say, transparency, because these multiple communication channels, one person can text something out, boom, it's out.
Yeah.
And now it's transparent, and now that's different, and that's what we would always say, who knows what when. Because I would say 99.9% of the time, we were trying to protect people, saying, if they know about a reorg, an M&A, a this or that, the only thing people think is my job safe? It's not,
Oh, yeah.
"Well, this makes sense for the company as a whole." No one thinks that. And so as we were going through a lot of these processes, trust and truthfulness were at the forefront. What was happening is we couldn't predict the future, so we could only say so much. And to your point, Jen, for legal reasons too,
Sure.
because for publicly traded companies, you can't say this is exactly what's gonna happen because I'm buying you based on the news you're telling me. So,
Mhm.
we'd
But
have to be careful with that.
isn't there a role, though, in leadership? I don't know exactly how to guiding principle, for lack of a better term. I mean, I'm not talking about what you put on your website and say, "This is our guiding principles," but just like a cultural thing for decision making. Because if you think through that, when if you were going to, like, tell your or an employee found out how the decisions were made about them, let's just say that leaky sieve of information gets leaked out. If they found out the real reasons and not what you're saying, I mean, would you they trust you more or would they trust you less? And that's kind of the question that I think a leader has to ask, particularly when it comes to employee trust, is if the decision-making process includes them, if they found out how the sausage was made, would they trust you more or would they trust you less? So I kind of think of that as a principle of
Mhm.
whether you're making a decision based on really authentic reasons, or are you trying to do something sort of backhanded? I mean, and this kind of parlays into return to office right now. There's some people who are noticing um, that when companies decide to return to office, there are people who don't that self-select not to return, and so it turns into a riff.
Mhm.
Whether that's the intent of the leadership when they're doing it, it has a trust signal to it to say, "I don't trust you're working at home as well as you would if you came into the office." And then some people say, "I'm not going back to the office," and suddenly they have fewer folks where that may have been the intent behind it, but, the trust signal is that you don't trust me. So, of course, there's gonna be that next thing that
Mhm.
we do as humans, see something bad behind it. Like, there's a bad reason you're wanting me to do this versus it being, we have a cultural decision to make here, whether we're going to continue this or we're going to do it a different way. I mean, from a standpoint, that's another consideration here is like, what signals are you sending when you track people's, how often their computer's active or those types of things. I mean, that's a trust tax piece that I think there's a way to measure that. And over time, you figure out, oh yeah, that isn't a great position for us to have because it does send up a flag that we don't trust you as an employee or as a team.
That I remember reading about, uh, well, and still read about that there are now little machines you can buy to move your mouse all over your screen so it looks like you're working, and when I
Mm.
heard that, I thought, "That company is probably having issues long before this one." It's
Oh
like
yeah, yeah.
and
Well,
that's those are the signs where it's like, okay, that's a trust issue not only from an employer standpoint, because I don't think most it's I've always found it interesting, kind of a line from Men in Black, "People are smart, a group is stupid," because most of the people are when you work with everybody has a boss or a person or something where like, "Not my favorite person. I respect the work you do, but you're not coming to happy hour with me." Fine, who cares? But the group of people can make less than delightful decisions, um, and that's where when I'm tracking, and I firmly believe this, and not a lot of leadership do, but I think most leaders operate out of fear, where it's like, "Well, let's track this and see what they do." It's like, well, if you're having to do that, you're doing something wrong already. There is something systemically wrong if you are so concerned that the productivity is down that much that you're tracking mouse traffic across the screen. It's like we're looking at the wrong thing now. We are completely looking at the wrong issue here.
Right.
And that's the piece to me where if you don't want to come back to work, and I remember at the beginning, I probably said this to you, Paul, when it was like, oh, let's get everybody back in the office. And I'm like, almost, it seemed to be all the older CEOs because that's how they grew up running a company. They didn't know anything else, no harm, no foul. But it's like, Jesus, God, I don't know how to run this company if I don't see people every day. Younger business owners who had started business were like, "Well, yeah, but my people work that way anyway, so I'm okay with it." Yeah, and so it was really it felt much more old school, and it's not I don't think it was a distrust thing. It was a skill thing on their part that they didn't know how the hell to run this thing
Mm.
without seeing people in their seats because that's what they grew up with, saw their parents grow up with, and that equated success, productivity, and bottom line. No, the culture was not in any of that. That's what I thought was so interesting.
Mhm. And Susan, that's
one of
such a
the
good point.
telltales sorry.
Oh, sorry, Paul. Um, that companies start noticing that they have a trust problem, to your point, like, when it's so far down the line, and what they're looking at oftentimes is the symptom of lack of
Yeah.
trust and not what is the root cause of lack of trust. And
Mhm.
what it's been making me think about is what is trust really made of? I think there's really
Mhm.
two important components: truth and transparency.
Mhm.
Are you being truthful? Like, I love, Susan, like, your first question that you help organizations with is what is the truth of the situation, and how
Yeah.
transparent can you be with that truth? Because when we lack information, what we will do is we will start making assumptions. And our
Oh,
brain
yeah.
is hardwired to always assume the worst. And so we will
Mhm.
Make
start to
shit up.
make things up. And if organizations leave any room for assumptions, even the slightest bit, the assumption default is going to be negative with your people.
Mhm.
I think, what I was gonna say earlier is one of those metrics when you're thinking about a trust tax and you're thinking about measuring it, one of those things is how how many people get CC'd on emails? That is a huge indicator of how trustworthy people have that relationship. What's your relationship like? Do I need to copy somebody else in to cover me off on this, or to make sure that the purpose of a CC is to actually build collaboration, but it actually has in some ways the
Mm,
opposite effect of like a
Mhm.
telltale.
yes.
So I'm going to tattle, that kind of stuff, and that's a trust indicator. Absolutely, and I think, when you measure that over time with a company, you can kinda see what their culture's like, because the more CCs they put on, the less productivity actually comes and the less people are trying to do something novel or unique, they're just trying to CYA. So I that is for me, as a systems guy, it's like, "Oh, that would be fun measurement to keep track of as you go
Mhm.
to
Oh,
say, 'What do you got going there?'" I love that kind
Well,
of stuff.
how I
Love
think
knowing
that
that kind of stuff, I should say. I don't love that it happens, but I love knowing that's it. But
but I think it's interesting because there's the trust issue. I always think it's not a communication problem, it's a show me problem, because you can't say, "I sent this letter out, so now you trust me." It's just like a relationship. You don't go on a first date and go, "Thank God we're getting married." It's like, "I don't even know where you live." It's like, and so you've gotta have this built trust over time, and then what does that look like? When we would do these things, it was always we can send out, because Jen, to your point, if you don't send something out, when there's not really one solution, it's like a 2 or 3 pronged solution. You've gotta show, you gotta walk the talk. I hate that phrase. It is so stupid, but it's true. Um, I You have to say, "Here's what we're gonna do," and then do it, and not through Minions, although I love Minions because that is my one of my favorite movies. N The leadership has to do it. Leadership has to show up and say, "Hey, how's it going?" To show that again, those situations and trust are trickle down. It's not trickle down to the executive VP level and then they'll trickle it down. It's like, no, you gotta show up and do it. Um, the most successful companies who are concerned, not the most successful, the ones who survive the ups and downs, because I don't want to say success is money. The ones who have survived the ups and downs understand who their people are. And if your people are comfortable, they will do the work and thrive. And that has been how trust is built. We always used to say this, when Paul and I worked together, when we've all worked together and with other clients and in different companies, I got your back. That was the most important thing. It wasn't reporting to me or to anybody else. We would always say this to the CEOs. The most important thing is that you show you have their back. That is critical. And if you can't do that, from leadership down, you have got problems because then you're in that, I'm going to cover my ass because at any given moment I could be fired and I'm going to make sure it's like that save yourself mentality is really hard to have a productive, successful, bottom line driven culture and company. If you don't have everybody on the same page, knowing I can trust you. And I think
Right.
that was, I always thought if my people are happy, the rest will fall into place. And that was the, people would say, well, what's your job, Susan? It's like to make sure nobody out there is unhappy. That is my job. And then after that, we just have fun learning. But that is, I, I've met a lot of business leaders who believe the same thing, but there are a lot that don't. It's just a transaction. You show up, I pay you. And
Yeah,
again,
but that fun of, um, we're gonna learn together, that requires trust across the board.
yeah,
You have to have that. Otherwise, it's not gonna happen. Then it's like, I need to know what I need to know, and I gotta have to have a piece of paper or a certification to prove that I know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, forget it. But that learning together piece is that I think, Jen, that probably I'd love you to ask that feels like a tribal thing. It's like a really early brain thing of how do we work together to survive? Am I is that accurate? I mean, it just kind of feels like it, but you would know better than me.
Yeah. I mean, we could not survive on our own doing all of the hunting, all of the gathering, all of the child rearing, all of the creating of shelter. You could not do that alone. You needed a tribe, you needed a community where it really was all about my survival depends on your survival, which depends on all of our
mhm,
survival. Susan, this idea of I've got your back versus I'm covering my ass. I love that.
yeah,
And what it made me think of, I'm I I do improv comedy and I perform, but one of the last things that we say to each other before we go on stage is, I've got your back. I've got your back. And really, one of the goals of improv is to make your partner look
Dead at your
good.
front door.
And if everybody goes in with that intention, I'm going to try to make everybody else on stage look really good. They're also thinking, Jenny,
Yeah,
I'm going to make you look really good. And when that
Right.
is the mindset where you have that sense of trust and you can take that risk, because if something goes badly, somebody's right there to pick you up, to yes
Yep.
well,
and that thing of it's so important.
that's the ultimate trust, I would think, is getting on
Mhm.
stage with people that you know are gonna be there when that joke goes really awry or can
Yeah.
help you unwind that really stupid thing you just said. So, is it really that different for business? Probably not, particularly, like,
No.
when you're doing a client presentation, you gotta have that. Otherwise, you're kinda out there flailing, and
Yep.
we've all
Mhm.
seen that happen, and that's another trust indicator
It
because
is. It is.
yeah.
And we would train people in crisis because you've got a fight or flight thing there, and if you're in charge of a team, a location, a building, blocks, cities, whatever it would be, um, it was you have to have each other's back through that because the minute somebody jumps ship, you have lost control. Now, people will jump ship, and there are always outcome scenarios for that for various reasons, but you have to walk in that crisis team, what's going on is we have each other's backs in this, and to do that meant you had to have transparency in communication and who you were as a person. So you'd say, "I'm not good at that," because you can't test it in 7 seconds when you have to make a decision. And
Yeah,
so it was really good training for me for running the company where it was I would have to ask my team, "If you think something's going south, you have got to tell me because I can't save you in the moment. if I
Mm.
don't know what's happened. It is very hard for me to do that, and it's not because I wouldn't, it's just that I
I
know
don't
how
know.
to save you in almost every situation, but I have to know everything.
Yeah, I don't know why that just rings a bell, Susan. I don't know. Was I just terrible to work with? Because you kept saying that to me, and I'm like, "What?
No, you were
You know
not.
everything. You know everything."
Well, no, but it's because I
Mm,
think a lot of the times who we work with in business
yeah,
is if you tell me everything and who you're working with, it's not necessarily what are you doing, but what are the
right,
situations you're working with?
right,
Who are
right.
the players? What's happening? So I can have your back. So if we know that there's someone in finance, it's kind of a whatever, a nut job or something. It's like, okay, if there's someone in HR who's, not quite with it for whatever reason, I have to know that. So it's like, well, they said this, this, and that. And it's like, yeah, the truth is somewhere in the middle, but at least I have an understanding of the situation so I can have your back. And that would build the trust,
Mm,
which would, I think, keep people within the crisis group and then coming back if there was another crisis because the situation worked well. Or same thing in a riff. This worked as best it could, and we were prepared for things because we were honest with each other, we trusted each other, and we had each other's backs. And the business leaders I worked with, we all talked about it. We have to trust our employees, and it's our what we trust our employees, we have to prove we're worthy of their trust back. It was never the other way around. You trust me automatically. It's like, of course you don't. You came
yeah,
to work for me or this company or whatever on a wing and a prayer. Is that the phrase? I don't know. But because of that, it was our job to show you can trust us. And with that, in a good environment, it was easier to keep people. It was
Mm.
easier to keep the really smart people. And everybody goes off and graduates to better things, but those were the kind of the my advisory board and like I said, in the companies I worked with, that was the gold to develop trust. It was never on the employees. It was always on the business leaders to keep the best people, and it wasn't by money. A lot of the people that the problem people were the ones who weren't driven by money. It's like, "Dear God, how are we gonna keep you?" It's like so it was really interesting.
Susan, I love what you said there. And I made a note of that trust is a totally a two-way street, and especially in the business world. And I think a really important question that especially large business owners, boards, executive teams need to ask themselves, what are we doing on a daily
Yeah.
basis that is creating trust? Instead of like, well,
Mhm.
people should just automatically trust us. They should show up. They should do their jobs. They should put in the work. What are you doing specifically to foster and create trust? And I think a lot of them, if you look at it like,
Yes.
there's not a lot that we're doing to create trust because what we're often
No.
doing is we're downsizing, we're laying off, we're restructuring. There's new policies and procedures all the time. And guess what? Guess who those benefit more? The people or the company? It's always the company. And
right.
so if
Well,
you
it
really
Yeah.
look side by side and create a list of what are the things that we do that erodes trust? What do we do that helps to build trust? I think most organizations would be blown away by how much they do that erodes trust.
Yep. And I think they believe that communication builds trust, which is a lie. It is part
Yeah.
of building trust, but just because I sent this out doesn't mean I trust you now. Most
you
most
believe it
people
either.
yeah, and most
Mm.
people don't believe it anyway.
Yeah,
But I think it's we would always say, "Here's what we can say. Here's what I can't say," because there are legal wranglings. I mean, there are all sorts of and people understand that. I mean, I understand you can't tell me everything, but tell me when you think that'll change. Just keep me along the journey and check in. And it's not just communication, and I think that's the default for HR and M&A and riffs and stuff. It's like, we'll send the memo out and it'll be fine. And they can't understand why the intellectual capital just exited the building. And it's like, the smartest people usually leave first because they're just like, this ain't for me and I don't trust you and I can go find something else. And by the time you realize the smartest people left, you're left with your C plus B minus folk. And it's like, it's hard to innovate with C plus B minus. Ooh, that is so harsh. But that's the way we used to
Well,
talk. So
but it's a reality. It's a reality.
yeah.
I mean,
Um,
I'm curious about this. How would each of you define trust?
that's a great question. I think um, what comes to mind is that I don't have surprises. I don't
Mhm.
I don't work with somebody that gives me constant surprises like gotchas or oh, I didn't know that, so I'm having to react a certain way or I'm have to respond to something. To me, that's it takes time to have that experience in order to build that feeling that I can trust you. Um, I think there's also for me, if I hear somebody say, honestly, or the truth is, those are signals to me that I'm not always getting the truth from them.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
That
that's because
red
'cause I'm old.
flag isn't waving.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's my personal life experience telling me whenever I hear that, I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna scrutinize you differently,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because it may not be the truth you're telling me or
Yeah.
the full truth." You know, half truths are can be considered untruths as well. So maybe you're telling me partly true, but I'm deeply skeptical just because of lots of experiences that make me go,
Mhm.
"Hmm." So, maybe I'm looking at this at the opposite way you were asking the question, "How do you develop trust?" Well, that's action. You know, that's definitely making sure that people follow through with what they say they're gonna do, and, if they can't, they give a reason for it. Um, that's not an excuse or the dog ate my homework.
Mhm.
Mhm. I
Susan,
would
how do you
say,
define trust?
yeah, I don't know if I define it as much as I experience it, and that's over time. It's like it's historical, mostly because I don't think people reveal themselves right away and just because it's people. And so it's like over time you learn who to trust, and it doesn't mean I don't trust or do trust right away. It's more of an exploration and a roadmap. And so it's like, "Oh, we took a left there. That is interesting." And it's like and it's so as the relationship develops and as I get to know you, it's then, "Okay, I can trust to this level or that level," and it's no judgment, no harm, no foul. Uh, it's I trust it's kind of a moving target because if you're going crazy in your life and you say you're gonna do something and you don't, it's because your life is going crazy, and I get that, and that's fine. It's like I tend to trust more on who the person is than what they do for me, if that makes any sense. It's like there's a trust. I had an advisory board, and I trusted their opinions, and they'd give me they weren't close friends. A lot of them weren't close friends because I couldn't have them be close friends to get good advice. Um, not that my close friends don't give me good advice,
But
but it's like,
that's a
you
truism. That's a
that
truism, yeah.
it's like I didn't want people to say, "Oh, you're working so hard, though." It's like, "No, tell me what the hell's happening." And I trusted them, and they didn't get paid. They were just fine human beings, um, because of their experience and expertise, and I knew they'd deliver, which is a very different trust than my employees or clients. And so for me, there were different levels of trust. I trusted my employees to the ends of the earth, all of them. They were just all brilliant, all really smart. And if there were ever issues, it's because there was stuff going on in their lives, and you have to understand that. And it had nothing to do with trust. That was a performance thing, and let's figure that out. And then in clients, I had a healthy skepticism because they couldn't tell me everything because of legal reasons, HR reasons, personal stuff. And so I have these levels of kind of expected trust for different situations, so it's not 100% everywhere. That makes no sense, but I had to do it that way.
I think that's your proprietary, uh, tr truth, score, you have your own methods, and just like
Yeah.
I explained, I have mine. Well, and how about for you, Jen? What are your how do you determine trustworthiness?
To me, it's proof over time. And really,
Yeah.
when you divide those things, Paul, you used this word, it's action. What actions do you take consistently? I mean, that's really at the heart of how to create trust.
Mhm.
Proof over time.
We all
What are your
said time.
actions?
That's funny, we all said time was a component in our trust determination. So, yeah, I can totally get that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So, what's the big takeaway for everybody? Do you trust us to give it to you right now?
Somebody else go first, please.
Ah.
Um, I think like I actually took a lot of notes today. I really love the I've got your back versus I'm covering my own ass.
Mhm.
If everybody approaches the situation with I've got your back, which means you've got my back and everybody else has each other's back, I think that goes so far in creating a culture of trust.
Yeah. I would
Truly.
say start with the truth that you can tell, because there are always HR legal there are so many legal reasons
Right.
why we couldn't do things, but we learned to tell the truth with what you know right now, and then just kinda show up for that and make sure that everyone understood it. Don't send the memo out and go, "Oh, they must have it." But then I would say, yeah, I've got your back, and that is not something you say, "I have your back," and you revisit it every 12 months. It's, "I've got your back," and you've gotta check in and say, "What's going on? Is there anything I need to know?" There's a constant check-in so you can help people. And then I always assume I'm never trusted until I do something remotely decent that makes sense. And a lot of it was, I've got your back, and I got people out of some really horrible scrapes who were my employees and other people. It's like, "No, here's how we get through this." And it's just knowing that. And I think so just I always assume it's my job to get people to trust me.
Mm.
And if they don't trust it's like, that's a different story in a different podcast, that's fine, but but I think it would be the truth and showing up and have their back and never assume that you're trusted, and all of those were kind of foundations for what I would tell clients and how I tried to run the business all the time, all the time. It's like, I got it because I had to get people to trust me.
I think in thinking through this topic, one of the major things that popped up through all the experiences I've had with being either an employee or even a leader in change is that what isn't said is sometimes more impactful than what is said. And sometimes it's really important for you to keep in mind that how you're thinking about it is going to parlay into how you are going to say what you're going to say about it. So if you're coming at something with good intent, that will come through. But if you are holding back for whatever reason that is not necessarily in the best interest of either your enterprise or your employees or even yourself, you just got to be mindful of that because
Mhm.
it will sneak out. And
Mm.
another piece of it is like you mentioned, Susan, earlier about the sieve of how things get be mindful of who you tell what, because not in a bad way, it's just that you all have to have the same intent as you're going forward.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it is gonna come out somehow, and someone will find a way to share that regardless. You say it to one person, it's out there. So, just be mindful of your thoughts because that often will lead to really positive things when it's positive and negative if it's negative.
Mm. Yeah. All right. That is today's episode.
Woohoo!
You guys,
Yay.
let us know things that you're curious about as it relates to work, life, business. I feel like there's no question too small, no question too big. We love to get in and explore and be curious. So let us know.
Yep.
And please add the silly things because that's where I thrive.
Even better.
And we'll have sort of a list of how to build trust showing up personally. I've got your back for any business owners who are like, "I'd like a starter list, please." So we'll have that in show notes.
Awesome.
Even how to track it, I'll throw some things in on that because
Okay.
I think some people would find that interesting over time to see how their company's doing with their truth tax.
Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys next time.
Bye.
Before you go, a friendly reminder that the people on this podcast are curious, not certified. Nothing you just heard is professional legal, financial, or business advice. It was a conversation, a good one, but still just a conversation. And if something they said makes you want to rethink your entire business model, maybe you should sleep on it first and then call someone with a license. The hosts bring the ideas and you bring the judgment. And if it all works out, they'd love to hear about it. If it doesn't, well, then they've never met you. All content is copyright Monsters of Curiosity and may not be reproduced or distributed without permission.